Hey everyone, my name is Lina and I'm from SplitMetrics, and this is actually a brand new episode of App Growth Talks, series of interviews with mobile growth, mobile marketing experts and experts on mobile apps and games. And today's special guest is Jevgen Tarasenko. He's head of App Store optimization at Tilting Point. Tilting Point is actually a very famous free-to-play mobile games publisher with offices literally across the globe. Um, Welcome, Yevgen, and thank you so much for joining me today for this episode of App Growth Talks.
Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
So I have a lot of questions for you. I'm sure everyone will be interested to learn more about you, about your expertise, and about your company, and about what you are doing. So, Evgen, you are, like I have already said, you are head of App Store optimization at Tilting Point, but also you are actually a drummer of NAK. This is a Ukrainian, I guess this is a rock band or this is a metal band. Please
Yeah,
tell
more
me
metal band.
if I'm right. Yeah, and I wanted to. I always admire people who have really a lot of hobbies and so they have something apart from work, what they do, what they love. So I wanted to ask, how do you actually manage to balance these two activities? And maybe you draw inspiration from your band, from your hobby for your work. Could you please share with us?
Yeah, that's true. I've been drumming with different levels of activity and success for about 15 years, and last 2-3 years were kind of uphill. Uh, yeah, as you mentioned, I'm playing currently at a mix of progressive and post-metal band called NAG from Ivano-Frankivsk, Ukraine. And yeah, we've been moderately successful recently. We've signed on a label, we released an album, and last year we've been nominated for Best Ukrainian Metal Act and shortlisted as one of the best Ukrainian metal bands. And yeah, it's actually pretty hard to combine drumming on almost pro level with daily growth marketing activities. You need to stay in shape, you need to find the time for rehearsals, recordings, and occasional gigs, which were not very frequent during the pandemic times, of course, but yeah, still something going on. And overall, I would say it, of course, adds to being pretty busy, but helps with mental health and especially during pandemics. And yes, it helps to draw inspiration. And by the way, I bought electronic drum kit like a couple of days ago. And since I'm working from home, yeah, it's in my room. And whenever I have a couple of minutes, it just helps to refresh the brain and just to switch activities. So it's been a huge help.
Thank you, Yevgen. And I wanted to ask, do you use your headphones or how's it going? It is all loud or you use
Yes,
headphones?
it is, yeah, louder than I expected because you can still hear sound from drumstick hitting the cymbals or whatever. But yeah, it's much more quiet than the acoustic drums. So yeah, it's acceptable to have it at home, and I'm using the headphones. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
very
hope no
interesting
one hears me.
because I also like musical instruments and everything related to drumming really interesting to me as well. Thank you so much. And now let's discuss your work, your company. You and your team at Tilting Point, you, as far as I'm concerned, you have won an award with your game SpongeBob Krusty Cook-Off. And what is more, you were also listed among, I guess, top 50 game makers by
Yeah,
PocketGamer.
27 to
This
be
is
exact.
this is really cool, I guess. You are recognized by such great resources like PocketGamer, and the competition is getting tougher, yeah. And I wanted to ask, how do you at Tilting Point actually, I don't know, fight your competitors, or how do you handle this competition, and how do you manage to achieve such really, really great results? Could you please share?
Yeah, sure. First of all, that's not fighting per se. It's like moving in a similar direction, and yeah, probably trying to be the best, but I wouldn't call it fighting, because yeah, we share insights and collaborate at many topics. Like there was an initiative recently when lots of gaming companies united and tried to help the gamers around the world to yeah, feel better and to improve the situation that's been going on for a long time. And being one of the top 50 game makers for PocketGamer, it was a huge achievement for us, of course. When it comes to the recipe, probably I'll be very trivial here, but it's a lot of hard and consistent work. There's no secret sauce to that. Yeah, also good communication between the departments, being organized and as automated as possible, and dedication and setting the ambitious goals. That's probably the key metrics for success, I would say.
Yeah, thank you so much, Evgen. Really, really interesting. And you mentioned automation. So you use specific tools, right, that automate your routine manual work, right? I agree with such an approach. And my next question is also about your company. I know that Tilting Point has really a lot of offices, like I mentioned before, across the globe, and you have offices in Barcelona, New York, Kiev, and also in Seoul, which is in South Korea. I think this is quite a progressive approach. And it's obvious that you are also targeting Asian markets, as you have an office in Seoul. And this is a really, really interesting topic, and I guess for our audience as well. Many publishers now are interested in winning Asian markets, in understanding the specificity of work there. And you're head of ASO, so I wanted to ask, maybe you could share some interesting specific features related to Web Store optimization for the Asian markets. Something interesting you could share at this point.
Yeah, sure. We're a global company, and having office in Seoul helps greatly to achieve Asian markets, and it makes us closer to the developers, especially when it comes to the time zone, because yeah, that wouldn't be a huge issue if we did this from Europe or the US. Probably the main thing to achieving success in those markets is understanding the nuances of the market and specific game niche. Asian users not only have favorite genres that are different from average or American or European users, but also specific views to seemingly simple casual games. Yeah, like they're very specific. And if the internationalization isn't done right, will be looking funny at best in their stores, and you will lose trust to the brand at worst. So it's very important to understand how they view the game and what do they like to see on the listings.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I know that for Japan, for example, there are a lot of funny, salient, vivid elements on the App Store screenshots used by publishers. Is it the same for South Korea, or it is a little bit different? or maybe they for this market you utilize a lot of characters on screenshots, so maybe you could mention something like that.
I would say, yeah, every country is different, and we need to pay attention to the smallest details. But when it comes to bright, colorful images, characters, lots of inscriptions in vivid colors, that's mostly true for those markets. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks so much, because the topic of cultural specificities and localization is it never gets old, because it's always interesting to all of us. And what game genres, in your opinion, are most popular today? The first thing that came to my mind when I asked you this is hyper casual games. Am I right? Or maybe it depends, and there are some other genres.
Yeah, it's hard to say because the palette is changing constantly, but casual and hyper casual are still on top. And in my opinion, it's connected to one of the biggest issues of the Generation Z, short attention span. So people don't like watching videos longer than 30 to 60 seconds, like on Instagram, TikTok, other platforms, and majority don't want to be engaged in a long learning curve. It's basically just fire up the game and start playing. Get your dopamine fix right now. Funny thing, I'm following the football events closely, and I don't know if you heard this. They secretly wanted to start the Super League of European clubs, which failed in like 2 days because it wasn't very legal. But another thing, they want to go another mile and introduce different rules for the game, because they specifically say that core audience of younger people, like 12 years old, they can't watch the whole game. It's boring for them. So even the whole football industry can be changing just because of this, because of the short attention span. So that's probably something to pay attention to. And that's why I think the hyper casual genre is so popular, which is another reason, yeah, you can just go ahead and watch the football or the movie and play a game without using too much brain. This doesn't mean that midcore or hardcore game are less popular or earn less money, but in terms of downloads, the hyper casual still rules.
I got it. Interesting. Maybe because it's really, I agree. It's a really quick thing to do. You've installed the game and and started playing, and that's it. But midcore games, probably yes, they have their own audience. And for those mobile game publishers who would like to scale, or maybe app publishers, for those who would like to scale with creative optimization, probably you could provide a bit of advice, some tips. What moments would you advise to pay attention to scale with creatives?
For creatives, first of all, you will need the proper strategy. And depending on the situation, you can either have the iterative approach, like to define the general direction in which you will be moving and do small changes to the creatives, or another common approach is just go full throttle and do very different kinds of things, like maybe even something that's never been done before by your competitors. You've never seen this on the store, maybe something from offline even. Of course, set goals and expectations and check every now and then if you're going in the right direction. And if not, go ahead and adjust your strategy.
Thank you so much, Yevgen. I think you mentioned one point that's about pivoting. I think that when at some point you just stop and try another direction, you turn 180 degrees. And we have talked about some tips for scaling with creatives, and we have talked about game genres. And my another question is related to both these topics. I wanted to ask, what are some creatives design trends for specific game categories? Probably you've mentioned something that works for particular genres in terms of creatives.
That's an interesting one. Obviously, the creative should be specific to the category and reflect main games features. And since we already touched the topic of casual and hyper-casual games, it's really distinguishing that the icon screenshots and pretty much all the graphics and listing should be pretty simple, in my opinion. And yeah, that was backed up by multiple tests that we've done over the years. Maybe down to simple screenshots without any calls to action or the inscriptions. Another feature that is working very well for multiplayer games, also we've tested this on a couple of games and it worked pretty good for us, is highlighting the existence of the multiplayer and the leaderboards and putting them on the first screenshot on the listing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I also heard from some other experts that they tried showing screenshots and games there just as they are, and it worked without any captions. And at the same time,
surprisingly.
The simplest is the best, right? But at the same time, you are talking about showcasing that this game has a feature, showcasing this feature on the first screenshot, that it is a multiplayer game. It also works. Very interesting. Thank you so much, Jevgen. And to obviously to optimize creatives, you need to run some experiments to test them, because you can't just add a new creative to the App Store because you are risking to drop your performance there. So I wanted to ask if you run App Store A/B tests, and what are your best practices in terms of App Store A/B testing? How do you formulate a hypothesis? How do you find ideas? Do you brainstorm with your team, or there is a separate team who generate ideas for your creatives? It's really interesting to know.
Usually, yeah, we have brainstorming sessions with the creative team every once in a while. It really helps because sometimes when you're working on a game for a couple of months or years, you can form kind of a tunnel vision and don't see clearly what the opportunities are. So involving the creative team is always a good choice. But yeah, oftentimes also we do the research the competitors, the trends, the even the colors that are trendy this year, and try and use this in the iterations. When it comes to forming the hypothesis, yeah, that's pretty much the process. Just come up with the idea or the ideas, write them down, have a clear vision, and start testing and do as many iterations as possible.
I have another question, a small question related to that. How long does your testing process usually take? For example, 1 week or 2 weeks, or you don't have any limitations here and you just test unless you have some really visible results?
I would say you should test not less than a week because audience behaves differently during different times of week, even times of day. And if the test is going for way too long, like more than 2 weeks, it probably means that you want, like either your traffic is not enough or you don't have the significant differences between the variants and you will never achieve the significance. So in that
Yeah.
case, it's probably better to just stop the test and test something else. And another
Yes.
thing, never trust the test. Never. You always have to do the before and after testing. Like if you have a winning options, apply it to the store, but still check if it really moved the needle for the conversion rate, impressions, downloads, whatever your KPIs are. Yeah.
Interesting. So you also run follow-up experiments, right? Checking the
Mhm.
impact. Interesting. Thank you so much, Evgen. And as for creatives recycling, I wanted to ask, have you ever reused your creatives? I don't know if this is a best practice actually, but I've heard that some publishers resort to it. And what do you do with creatives that for example, they have become ineffective, they don't perform well right now. Is it possible that you or another your team, for example, user acquisition team, they will reuse them later for some banner ads or something like that? Or once it's old and you don't return to that?
Yeah, actually, that was constantly happening to me at Tilting Point and in the previous companies. The old creatives worked again. I don't know why is it happening. I don't have the clear explanation, but that's true. So my advice is, if you have some, yeah, first of all, have the bank of the creatives, like know where they are, where to get them, the PSDs or high resolution screenshots, have them handy. And whenever you have a gap between some topical events or the creative team is busy, you can't produce anything else, just, yeah, go ahead and test the old stuff. And surprisingly, that might work and improve your conversion rate.
Really, really interesting thing because it's kind of a loop, I guess, or a cycle that at some point a creative becomes working efficient, effective again. I think it's like in
Mhm.
fashion, something that was in fashion 10 years ago, now again is in fashion. The same is with creatives. Really interesting. Thank you so
Could be,
much.
yeah.
Yeah, and regarding the app stores, the App Store or Google Play Store, they are constantly changing. They are introducing new rules, right? They are adding new features. And what do you think about their new features? Do you utilize them once they appear? For example, what I have in mind right now is Live Ops on Google Play, or you cautious here and you focus on some other things?
In general, yes. Not layoffs specifically, because this is not strictly ASO. There are other guys that handle this kind of stuff.
Mm.
But we always try to be on top of things and use new updates and features to improve the visibility of the games. I think that yes, you need to be on top of things and follow closely everything that both Google and Apple stores introduce to you. Uh, that's not actually only between the two stores, but Windows at Amazon and Huawei store stepping up recently. And for example, Windows has introduced the limited testing thing for cross-buy boxes, like initiative to cross-promote your apps within the portfolio. So we are kind of exploring this as well. That could be a good opportunity. So yeah, always check for the new stuff and try to implement. And since we're speaking about the App Store updates, next couple of weeks will be very fun, I would say, and they will shake up the industry.
Oh, very interesting. And regarding some in-app metrics, in-app indicators, do you somehow track the correlation between your App Store optimization efforts and something that happens lower in the funnel? I'm talking about retention, lifetime value of users, and overall, are you able to affect those metrics with your App Store product page visuals?
We check them, but don't really interact with them directly, and maybe that's a good idea for the future. To answer your second question, yes, the good creatives have a higher conversion rate and high engagement. They also have the potential to improve retention, LTV, whatever comes down the funnel after the download. So yeah, this is also true for the link between GA and organics or the ASO. Because in most cases, having the uniform graphical assets for the UA creatives and listing on the store also help with the conversion rates, and it kind of encourages user to download and makes the whole path clearer because they see more or less the same images and signals along the way, and getting more decisive to get the app or game.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yevgen. And you've just mentioned paid user acquisition, and that was my next question. In theory, what do you think? Is it possible to grow a game, to make it prosper, to make it popular, like your games at Tilting Point, without any user acquisition efforts, just with organic App Store optimization and organic efforts? In your opinion, is it possible at all?
The short answer is yes, but it's really difficult, and oftentimes it's a game of chance. It was easier a couple of years ago when market wasn't so crowded, and yeah, you could use various tips and tricks, different traffic sources outside of the UA, make some cheap promotions to get things moving. But now the stores are really overloaded, and it's 1 in a million chance, I would say. Now you need to be very good with persistent organic optimization and to know how the algorithm work and have exceptional product, of course, in order to have any chances to be high up the charts without the paid acquisition.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's an interesting opinion. And you mentioned the product quality. Yes. Many experts agree that this is one of the main points that might affect the success. You can't just build something quickly today, right? Build quickly and publish it, and that's it. Everyone loves it. Like you said, the market is crowded, and this doesn't.
Today you can't fool anyone with bad product. Like, you have to get at least something good, better, exceptional, because otherwise people won't buy it.
Yeah, and even if they install it, they will remove it, and your conversion and visibility will drop. Thank you so much, Evgen. And we've talked a bit about user acquisition, and I don't know if you have anything to answer, but I would like to ask you, what do you think about Apple Search Ads? Because we mentioned the ATT framework introduction, and is it a promising channel in your opinion for this year and overall? What do you think in general?
Yeah, in general, if you're talking about the connection to the ASO, it's pretty beneficial, and we can figure out which keywords perform best and could be used in the organic optimization. And it also works vice versa, so we can sometimes advise which keywords to use for the Apple search ads.
And I have another a little bit philosophic question. You are head of App Store optimization at Tilting Point, and in your opinion, is ASO more about data, or it's more about creativity? or there is a balance between these two terms?
I would say it's like 80% data driven and 20% creative. It's more about data, but if you have a creative spark, that's also a huge benefit and a boost for the role and the overall vision. But at the end, all the creative performance is measured with numbers. So yeah, we're pretty much relying on benchmarks and hard data here.
Mm. It's interesting because I thought that at least half goes to creatives, and you gave 80% to data.
Yeah, you
Interesting.
need to measure everything, and especially now when it's getting tighter and you don't have as much creative freedom with the text metadata. Yeah, you need to go to the assets optimization and do your best to improve the conversion rate. And all these KPIs are number related. So you need to have a very good idea where you're moving and how you influence in the overall organic mix. So yeah, numbers first of all.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much. And to finish up, you have already shared some your thoughts regarding what will happen next about the competition. Like, let's say that this is competition between Apple and Facebook, and now when everyone is just waiting what happens next week, and probably when we publish it, we'll already know. Who
It will be
knows?
this week, yes.
Yeah, yeah. But everyone is also a bit anxious and excited about this year that has already started, about 2021. And I wanted to ask, maybe you have some thoughts, something that will happen, how this year will transform, if it will transform, what are trends will be visible and noticeable this year. Could you say a few words at this point?
Yeah, my knowledge is probably limited about what's gonna happen, but I can say for sure that there will be more competition on the store. There's still a lot of money to be made in the app stores, and everyone still wants their piece of pie in this. Though it gets increasingly hard for small or indie developers to enter the market. But yeah, there'll be still a lot of games and lots of people wanting just a piece of the spotlight. Also, more emphasis on the creative optimization because that's what works best for ASO. Probably even more loud acquisitions like we had in 2020 because yeah, companies can't keep up with the original ideas, and it's easier to buy someone who already owns some good IPs than start from scratch. But on the other hand, I really hope that developers will turn more to originality and figure out the ways to create new genres or genre mixes rather than copy pasting the successful ideas from 3-5 years before. That's probably my main takes.
It's really insightful for me personally. It's an insightful focus, very interesting. I think I agree with you, but let's see what happens. And thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Jevgen, for sharing your thoughts, for sharing something from your expertise, from your background, from sharing some best practices and tips. Really, really interesting and insightful. Thanks for joining us. And this was a fresh episode of App Growth Talks with Jevgen Tarasenko. He's a head of App Store optimization at Tilting Point. Learn from the best with SplitMetrics.
Thanks.